This is a dog, also called Canis lupus familiaris, from the order Carnivora. That puts them in the closest relationship to the wolf, the fox, and the jackal. Their nickname is man's best friend. This is a conquistador, which is Spanish and Portuguese for conqueror. They were the soldiers of the Spanish and Portuguese empires during the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, making countless expeditions to the New World during these times, conquering the natives of the land that would become the Americas, which at the time were inhabited by the Aztecs of Central America and the Incas of South America. Some of the most famous conquistadors of the time were individuals like Hernan Cortez and Francisco Pizarro. Some of the most popular dog breeds are Golden Retrievers and German Shepherds. A dog is a quadruped. A conquistador is bipedal. They both grow hair. They both enjoy companionship. Why does any of this matter? Why would a dog and a conquistador have anything to do with one another? I think we should start from the beginning to get the full scope of what I'm saying. Dogs were domesticated about 50,000 years ago in the era known as the Upper Paleolithic, which is also known as the Late Stone Age. In the last 3,000 years, they have been used by every group of historical people that have occupied the earth, from ancient Egyptians to the Roman Empire. One of the earliest written accounts of dogs being used for war comes from Alyetes, king of Lydia, who used them to attack the opposing Sumerians around 600 BC. They even used them as scouts, trackers, and executioners. These dogs would usually be the ones to deal the final blow on the dying victim. However, it would be the Spanish conquistadors that used these animals on a whole new scale never seen in warfare before or after. As mentioned above, the conquistadors conquered the continent of the Americas for 500 years, starting from the 15th century and into the 19th century. Portugal was the first, looking for a trade route to China, sending their ships via the African southern coastline and the circumnavigation of the world by Ferdinand Magellan, as well as Juan Sebastian Elcano, and of course Christopher Columbus and his 1492 voyage, commissioned by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, rulers of Spain. So yes, the Spanish were close to achieving a conquest of the utmost magnitude, bringing with them new battle tactics and weaponry that the natives could not even imagine in their wildest dreams. As well as being white also shocked the natives, referring to their new visitors as gods. Another inquiry was the shining silvery plates dotting the men's bodies. Things like helmets, shields, swords, and chainmail were things never seen before in the New World. And the conquistadors used this, and the natives' nativity to their coming to their land, as a way to help them conquer the people. After all, superstition is stronger than any sword to the heart. But they also brought many other things with them, like animals. Horses were one of these animals. Big, galloping beasts that terrified the locals and were used to help the conquistadors gain the upper hand in battle. Wouldn't you flee from a strange human on top of a four-legged beast? Well, that's what the natives did, and it worked to the Spanish's advantage. But they also brought another animal with them. Dogs. Canis lupus familiaris. And we're not talking about those cute, cuddly types that lick your face and snuggle into your chest. The Aztecs knew all about that. They had their own breeds of dogs before the Spanish even arrived, something akin to a modern Chihuahua or the now known Mexican hairless dogs. But no, we're talking about the 200 to 250 pound beasts of burden with slobbering, sharp canines and strong, athletic muscles. Pit bulls, St. Bernards, and Mastiffs were the kind of breeds coming off the Spanish ships. The Spaniards had started using dogs as early as the 1260s, when King James I supplied them as guards of regional castles. The dogs that he chose the most were, you guessed it, Mastiffs and Pit bulls. Not long after, Christopher Columbus used them on his second voyage to the New World. Supplied by Don Juan Rodriguez de Fonseca, they were also used on the Canary Islands to kill the natives. The most used breeds were, well, Mastiffs and Pit bulls. Do I sound like I'm repeating myself? It's on purpose. Because the conquistadors' most prized dog of their pack was a canine named Becerillo. Becerillo, meaning little bull, was a brown-eyed, red-pelted, can you guess it? Mastiff. Becerillo was owned by a Spanish explorer, the one and only Juan Ponce de Leon. Leon was a conqueror of Puerto Rico, home to the Arawak Indians who celebrated the Tano culture, and who had lived there for thousands of years. Ponce de Leon had arrived in Puerto Rico in 1508 with the help of his trusty Captain Diego Salazar and Sancho de Aragon. The latter of the two taught Little Bull how to attack the helpless Tano people. Ponce de Leon and his men had taught Becerillo to distinguish between the Spanish and the natives, so the dog knew who was friend and who was foe. At the same time Becerillo was causing terror, Ponce de Leon had convinced Christopher Columbus's son, Diego Columbus, to make him governor of Puerto Rico. By 1512, though, Diego had grown jealous of Leon's power, scorching the earth of Puerto Rico of its vast riches. Diego convinced the king to make him governor and deported Leon for the island of Bimini, located in what is now the Bahamas, and said to be full of gold. Something Diego didn't think about. The money-hungry Leon went to Bimini, but left Becerillo behind in the care of Salazar and Sancho of Aragon. Salazar, who was a psychopath in his own right, saw a golden opportunity with Becerillo and used the dog to launch a series of vicious attacks. The most well-documented was actually a rebuttal to a surprise attack by the Taínos against unknowing Spanish. But thanks to Becerillo, who alerted his comrades, were able to easily subdue the revolt. In the end, the dog had killed 33 of the natives in the most brutal and savage of ways. Becerillo's reign of terror came to an end the morning of 1514, after an indigenous group of natives known as the Caribs from the island of Viscus, who deserve a whole video of their own, captured Sancho de Aragon, fleeing in handmade canoes. Becerillo, always up for a challenge, charged the canoes by barreling into the water with no regard for its own well-being. Minutes later, the dog had hundreds of Carib arrows lodged in its exposed body. They brought him back to shore, but it was too late. The animal was dead. Becerillo was given a secret burial. It was said he was mourned more than any fallen human. Thus, the end of Becerillo is more benign than you would think a giant man-killing mastiff might have been. But it is what it is. I think it was interesting that the author of this article would mention that Becerillo was mourned by the conquistadors more than any of their fallen human comrades. It just goes to show you the power a dog has on its human master, even in the most horrible of life circumstances, like colonization. In fact, the majority of the conquistadors had these war dogs at their sides. Hernando de Sotos, who explored the Yucatan Peninsula and was one of the first European explorers to reach the Mississippi River, had his own war dog. He called it Bruto. There was a war dog used in Granada whose name was Mohama, who caused a lot of damage, and even Leoncillo, the son of Becerillo, was used by Vasco Núñez de Balboa as a beast to be feared. This may seem, to maybe some die-hard animal lovers, or just people with a sick sense of humor, to be an example of man's best friend being used in its most primal usage. But these dogs were not just used to help win battles. Dogs were used as key methods of psychological warfare as well. The Spanish had this game they would play called La Malantira en Ferro, or the hellish hunting, or simply known as dodging, where they would use the dogs to attack important figures in the tribe's community, like a chief or political figure, and have them shred the person to bits. This would put all the natives on notice. Now, their most important figure in their community has just been slain. It was a cruel and evil way to get the natives under the Spanish's control. But how in the world could the Spanish get their dogs to so viciously attack and kill other humans? It was not only the training of distinguishing between friend and foe, but the masters would also feed their hounds the flesh of dead natives, having them get used to the taste of human meat, and in their fit of hunger, the Spanish would then starve the animals for a few days before a battle just to get them ravaged and ready to kill. I think it's also important to note in terms of psychological warfare that the mere sight of the dogs was enough to scare the natives of the New World. Sometimes the dogs didn't even have to do anything, and the natives would huddle in fear, like campfire schoolchildren being told a ghost story. Aztec King Montezuma was told that the war dogs were huge, like spotted ocelots, with ears doubled over, hanging jaws with blazing yellow eyes, and gaunt stomachs and flanks with ribs showing. Even for me, as an avid dog lover, that sounds horrifying. If over-exaggerated, of course, it still worked as a psychological means to put fear into the hearts of the natives. These days, it seems the idea of a war dog, trained to kill and even disembowel their victims, is a ludicrous idea at most. But really, is it any farther away from what is now known as dogfighting? The horrific act of pitting two dogs between each other in a fight to the death, where the victor receives a large sum of money. I like to think that the age-old idea of the dog of war is more comparable to how dogs are used today in the police and army force. Not your snarling, rabid, foaming of the mouth beasts, but carefully trained animals used to sniff out bombs or drugs. Yes, these dogs are trained to take down a person if needed, but it's a far cry from the dogs of old tearing at human flesh and consuming it like their wolf counterparts would to a deer or a moose. Those animals attacked their prey with no hesitation, no remorse. Remorse? Why did I use that word in particular? Surely man's best friend can feel remorse, right? If not, dogs do feel certain emotions. They must. When a dog wants to cuddle, it is having the feeling of affection towards the one it's cuddling with. Or, if a dog tears into your trash and you yell at it, it knows it did something bad. But is that bad feeling remorse for what it did? According to wag.com, dogs are incredibly intuitive animals. They get excited when you come home. However, that excitement, the author continues, is rooted in deep anxiety, as a majority of dogs suffer from separation anxiety. It stems from how the owner interacts with their dog. You play with them, they get excited. You get them a bone, they want it. If you're sad, the dog will likely notice it and try to comfort you. So is it all down to human interaction? But humans can feel remorse. Again, from wag.com, it says when it comes to emotion and feeling emotions, a dog has the emotional level of a 2-year-old child. Remorse is a more highly developed form of emotion, as it is to feel regret or guilt for an act you have committed. Kids at this age, when they get in trouble for something they did, will start to cry or get scared. That's what they're feeling is fear, because they don't understand yet what they've done. That's how a dog feels. So if a dog can't feel remorse, as some researchers have suggested, how could a dog act on that emotion? The conquistadors taught their dogs to attack. They only felt the need to kill and nothing else because it was A, planted in their head at an early age, and B, they're acting off their master's interactions, which was to kill the natives. They had zero remorse for the natives, so that emotion never played into the scenario. Like I said before, the Spanish trained their dogs to distinguish between them and the natives. Training a dog is key to a dog's development. It will determine how they will be for the rest of their life. There are multiple ways to train a dog for different areas, like dog shows, the police force, or a rescue dog. However, for a dog in a regular home, the two basic models of training are casual dog, the sit, stay, shake, etc., and the guard dog, which has its own set of rules. Guard dogs are trained to protect your property and you and or your family. There are certain ways to train your guard dog, who will also act on its instincts to attack. Not because they have a bloodthirst appetite for humans, but because they want to protect you from a potentially dangerous person. WikiHow.pet shows how to train your dog to be a guard dog, but also to attack when necessary. Attack dogs are used by police and law enforcement, trained to attack on command and respond aggressively to potential threats or intruders. This is what the dogs of war did. They attacked on command by their conquistador masters, responding aggressively to a potential threat, that being the natives. A dog wouldn't know a potential threat unless taught what was a threat. The conquistadors may have used this tactic to get the dogs to feel threatened, so they attacked. Another example given for a guard attack dog is most attack dogs are well trained and will not act aggressively unless commanded by their owner, which means more than enough sense in the context of the Spanish and their dogs. So these dogs of war, including Becerillo, were products of training, based on the lack of a higher emotional grasp and how they interacted with their masters. A more controversial topic on why these particular dogs were so vicious comes from a more deep-rooted lineage, one I found to be touchy to some people. In fact, I'm not entirely sure if I agree with it wholeheartedly. What if it has something to do with the actual breed of the dog? I know, no one wants to believe a breed of dog is born bad, but let's look at something. Even if you don't believe dogs are born bad, you do agree there are dog attacks that happen, right? Look at this chart from Neil McCarthy's article on Forbes' website called America's Most Dangerous Dog Breeds. He gives us a scale and dates between 2005 to 2017. It shows the most dog breeds involved in fatal attacks. That means the dog killed the person. The highest number is from the pit bull. Not just the highest. Look at the difference between that particular breed and all the other numbers from the other breeds listed. A total of 284 kills. So, from 2005 to 2017, 284 people were killed by this breed of dog. If you look back at the breeds the conquistadors were bringing with them to the New World, one name you'll find is the pit bull. However, it is not the number one breed. That goes to the Mastiff. If you look at McCarthy's chart, farther down you'll see the Mastiff there, with 14 kills. So, between 2005 and 2017, the Mastiff breed killed 14 people. Hardly a comparison to the pit bull's 284, but it's still a number, a big enough number to make the list. With that in mind, I delved a little deeper. I found a website called mastiffweb.com. It has a whole article on Mastiff behavioral traits. One section of the article talks about the Mastiff temperament. That word caught my attention, for obvious reasons. Why would an article dedicate an entire section on talking about a dog breed's temperament? Probably because the dog's temperament is worth talking about, meaning there is a history of Mastiff temperament that any future dog owner should know. As I read this section of the article, what I found was very interesting. According to this article, when talking about Mastiff temperament, MastiffWeb.com references this temperament to an intense feeling of affection and great resilience. I was caught off guard by this. So what the article is saying is this temperament is a feeling of affection, which is when you have a fondness for someone. In that context, the Mastiffs of the Conquistadors fought and killed because they had an affection for their masters. This harkens back to the emotional level of a 2-year-old, as they will do what their master says regardless of it being right or wrong because they don't know any other way. I'm not saying dogs are all mindless robots. I'm saying they're animals that go by how their owner interacts with them and how they are trained. So maybe it actually has nothing to do with the breed, which is nice to hear. In the end, you can't say Becerillo and the other dogs of war during the conquest of the Americas knew exactly what they were doing. Dogs are animals. They're creatures of habit and are loyal through thick and thin, only inciting on what their master believes to be the right thing. So when it comes to pointing fingers at the historical missteps and horrific bloodshed of Manifest Destiny, don't blame the dogs. Blame the humans. I mean, it is always our fault after all.